What's the funniest thing PCs latched onto? Part 1. Have you ever been in a group where the players took an expression or metaphor literally and held the DM to its literal interpretation? Or just took an NPC intended as a throwaway and attributed much more personality and story to it than was intended? My favorite example is the DM never had a ranger or a cat-crazy player before. Bard rolls a nat 20 on stealth.
You drop into a low crouch and walk across the uneven floorboard so silently that you step right over a cat without,
I talk to the cat.
"What?
I can't speak with animals.
Okay. What are you going to say to the cat?"
Frantic page turning. I had a player who told me his character had a servant named Igor. So when we started, Igor was with the group also. He was obedient to a fault, had a funny voice, and loved the party. When we were playing, Igor followed the party around carrying their stuff, but I would forget to mention him. He would just fall into the background. This led to times when the party would have combat and then ask, "Where's Igor?" So I'd have him jump down out of a tree. Or they'd be walking along and someone would mention him, and suddenly he was right next to them. Over the course of a single session, Igor became the single most mysterious character, and everyone was in love with him. Unfortunately, we only played one session due to player conflict. However, whenever I DM, I always bring Igor back somehow. He just has a knack for popping up when you need him to. The pirate captain with the outrageous French accent, the Marquis de Champsabier. He was a one-off, an NPC buyer of a prize ship they were selling off. It's a pirate campaign. There is a country in the setting that is revolutionary France, complete with magical, sentient, soul-stealing guillotines. He claims to be exiled nobility on the run from the vigilante peasants, and considers himself a privateer in the Galton Navy. He dresses very flamboyantly, and is a fencing gentleman pirate. The players loved him, so I brought him back a couple times, and they have cultivated him as an ally. I've embellished his background since then. He's a bastard son of an exiled noble. Champsabier doesn't exist. His father wasn't a marquis of anything. And his real accent is totally normal for this part of the world. He created the character of the marquis to establish himself as a pirate captain. He thinks a good pirate captain needs a hook, a nickname, a legend to build. He decided exiled nobility was unusual, might put his victims at ease, and made him stand out amongst the other pirate captains. He's not even fantasy French. The chicken Gorbeak. I love it already! Turns out the stacking plus int items on a chicken, giving it the ability to reason and speak via some rather questionable magics, and eventually lighting the spark of magical power within it, produces interesting results. My PCs, mid-level and fairly powerful, once found themselves in Elysium, having to go to Hades. It was a planar campaign. They figured they could go there by descending along Mount Olympus, which is a pathway between those planes. All goes well as they approach the border. There's no well-defined line, at least how I presented it. The area goes from cheerful and sunny with friendly animals to gloomy and foggy, and mostly devoid of life. It's quite the trip, so they set up camp after just having crossed into Hades proper, where, upon waking, they found a goat. It was standing there, on the mountain, alongside them, with a look of fear. I put it in there for some flavor. The goat, not well versed in planar mechanics, went the wrong way and found himself in Hades, and was quite panicked. They spend half an hour analyzing the goat, half fearing it to be an evil demon goat, half fearing it to be a trap. Magical analysis, sense motive, animal handling. And when they found out it was a normal goat from Elysium that got lost, one of them took the goat all the way back up the mountain to get it safe. Upon which, it was very happy and started to graze again. All in all, a third of the session dealt with an ordinary, regular goat. As a joke, when a fellow player rolled a nat 20 on his stealth check in our game, the DM said he moved so stealthily that he entered the plane of stealth. The plane of stealth is now very real, periodically visited by us, and is home to a lot of lost rogues. Had a statue containing the remains of an ancient child monarch. The statue was made out of platinum, stupid me for thinking they couldn't find a way to carry it out, so the party broke it apart for ease of carriage. Upon finding the child's remains, they nicked him Pepito, and interred him in the small garden at their base of operations as something of a dead mascot. They wanted to know everything about him. Eventually, I just started making stuff up and worked him into the campaign. My players were looking for some orcs who had been ravaging the countryside. At one point, I describe a cottage completely destroyed and pillaged. The cleric decided to search around, but it was more of an environmental stuff to set up the tone. Nevertheless, I don't like to say, "You don't find anything," as I think that's lame, so I usually tell them they found something meaningless and worthless, not using those words, of course. In this case, I described a bronze little bell attached to a post on the outside of the cottage, like the ones used in movies to call kids to dinner, without the ball to ring it. Then, the cleric decided to keep it. Later, he told the others the bell was a proof that the orcs were kid killers. My bad for describing the bell like that, and savages who need to be dealt with. Some neutral characters were having their doubts. He carried the bell hanging from his neck for 3 sessions and dealt the last blow to the orc chief with it. Then engraved the holy symbol to it and used it as a divine focus. That's fucking badass. I love it. I led a campaign that was similar to Dragon Age, except set in Dungeons and Dragons. They found an old mage tower that had strangely appeared overnight and went to investigate. Of all the things they found, the portal connecting the kitchens to the study really caught their attention. It was basically a cupboard that the kitchen staff placed food and drinks into, that sent it up to the study where the wizard could then eat it and dispose of the dirty plates and waste in the same way. They exhausted every spell and broke a couple of weapons in trying to learn its secrets. Our cleric wanted to rest overnight to try a few more things in the morning, but it was merely a magical dumbwaiter. Fucking wish I had one of those. I play Middle-earth roleplay sometimes, and the invisibility spell it has makes a person or an object invisible and everything around it in a little radius. The thing is, it only makes one object invisible. So when you want to make a ship invisible, you have to make every piece of wood itself invisible. So it went like this.
I want to make the boat invisible.
You can't do it. You would need to make every plank itself invisible.
Nah, I just throw a big piece of fabric over it, make the fabric invisible, and the radius of the fabric makes the boat invisible. I was like, what?
My players just arrived at a city, and the inn they're staying at has a drunk duck as its mascot. 3 of the 5 players can cast Speak with Animals, and they did. And now, they love the Fonz. Ayy! Once I added my sister to a session between sessions, playing one-on-one in the same dungeon as my main group. She built a thief and helped the group by springing traps for them before they got into a room, then sneaking super hard so no one could find her. Unfortunately, she also picked a few pockets and stole some items, and my main group decided to hunt her down and execute her. I had to make up an outlandish stories about why they could never find or kill her. And none of them knew it was my sister, so several of my players started asking her if she knew who the other player was. Basically, a huge wild goose chase, and my sister got to play D&D without being part of the main group. My group recently started the Horde of the Dragon Queen campaign. During the siege of the town, one of my party members needed a rapier, so to give him this weapon that he so desperately wanted, the DM introduced a gnome running around swinging one like a madman. They traded 2 short swords for the rapier, and he ran off screaming and swinging them wildly. Occasionally, one of us will roll perception to see if we see him running around. My CE Dragonborn Paladin decided it would be a good idea to delimb a goblin and take his corpse to a wizard tower we were headed towards. First floor, nothing in the room, but some runes on the wall. Me.
I throw my goblin at the roof.
Oh no. Runes activate and reveal stairs to ascend nothing, but a library and a set of stairs. I throw my goblin up the stairs. No. Activates 2 sets of animated armor which attack us. After we deal with the armors, we head upstairs to a lab full of workbenches. I throw my goblin onto the nearest workbench.
Your fucking goblin is incinerated by a fireball trap. All that's left are his ashes.
Are there any empty vials or flasks that I can hold his ashes in?
Yeah, I suppose.
I collect his ashes and bear the flask they are in as a tribute to his life.
I can't fucking take it. Oh shit. I now have a flask of goblin ashes that I wear around my neck that gives me a +1 to all perception rolls. That's badass. My DM had homebrewed a trait for my paladin. Any spell that targeted only me affected both me and my owlbear mount, good or bad. I didn't mind him hitting both of us with magic missiles, etc., because I used it every single encounter so both of us could smite. OP, I know, but who doesn't love a smiting owlbear? So we finished one battle, very anticlimactic, when the Goliath fighter crit with a 9 live stealer, instantly harvested the boss's soul, and the rest of the mob of illusions just melted away. Terry, short for dysentery, the poo of death, had attacked once and missed, so still had her Great Claw Master Claws glowing with a thunderous smite locked and loaded. The rest of us looted the body and found some okay stuff for each of us.
Terry is looking for something to eat.
You find a pot of honey?
No! Terry is looking for something to destroy.
There's a pot of honey?
Terry notices a tiny little mouse getting too close to her pot of honey.
Okay.
She smites the mouse. Does a 19 hit?
Hit.
Terry does 24 damage. The thunder booms audibly for 300 feet, and the mouse flies 10 feet.
And the mouse squeaks and runs toward the honey pot.
Eh?
I shoot a ray of frost at the mouse. Hit. ROF does 3d8 damage and the mouse's speed is reduced.
The mouse is not slowed. He squeaks again and scurries towards the honey pot.
How is he not slowed?
How is he not dead?
The mouse is invincible.
I use Mage Hand to capture the mouse. I use Find Familiar to make the invincible mouse my familiar.
Done and done. To make this a very long story short, my players in a castle are under siege by goblins, orcs, ogres, wargs, being led by a high-ranking devil. As an offhanded remark, I said there was a lobster tree in the garden that grew lobsters? And when they became ripe, they fell off. Oh, that sounds fucking cool. The players decided they needed to use these lobsters to their advantage. They convinced the castle wizard to cast a ritual to communicate with the lobsters, and through hard bargaining and clicking of claws, they managed to convince these lobsters to go down to the nearby town, wait for the advancing army to hold up, then strike with the force of 40 lobsters. Seafood, motherfucker! In exchange, the lobsters would be freed back into the ocean if they lived, and one of them may be the warlock's familiar. The party then sent the lobsters over the wall to go off to the empty town. The bard then decided to use bardic inspiration on them, so the swarm of lobsters went off into a full gallop. As they approached the town, an unlucky warg patrolling got overtaken by the murder of lobsters. This is so good, and was reduced to bone in a matter of seconds. The lobsters then holed up individually in hiding spots waiting for the signal to attack. Now my question as the DM is, what the hell do I do? These lobsters are not dire or hoblo lobsters like my players asked, just normal crustaceans that understood vaguely the notion of sabotaging the encamped enemy. I need inspiration or advice on how to make it semi-realistic in D&D terms and fun/effective. Help? Okay, now Scott, you can leave this in or you can take it out. I don't care. This is for you DMs out there who would have a similar problem, or this guy if you happen to hear this story being read aloud. If, and this is just my opinion, if you actually went through with a 40 lobster army, the best thing you could do, in my opinion, are two things. One, in the middle of the night, the lobsters go in and steal/eat all of the rations and food, leaving the army completely empty. This would drain the army's rations, obviously, like I just said, and make them weaker. Or, and you could do a double up on this if you were really smart, you could have them sneak in the middle of the night and steal all of their weapons or loose equipment, dragging them off to the ocean or some shit. That is how you use an army of fragile little lobsters to your advantage. Stealth and logic. Enjoy.